The need for innovation with modern marketing design trends, non-scalable versus scalable growth, and how to manage your paid acquisition budget responsibly. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello. Hope you are doing very well whenever and wherever you are listening. My name is Ander, and it is truly a pleasure to be here with you and the rest of the worldwide listening community of Advertising Influencers, the podcast powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page platform. What a fascinating previous episode we had with Guillaume Caban, the VP of Growth at Segment. Guillaume and I got into a very granular discussion on post-acquisition personalization and a solution to the multi-touch attribution struggles experienced by so many marketers. And this episode, we are going a bit broader in our discussion on modern marketing trends with a veteran of the broader San Francisco and Silicon Valley growth marketing community, Zack Onisko, VP of Growth at Hired, a company doing all kinds of exciting things to completely disrupt the job searching and recruiting industry. Zack's resume is quite impressive. It includes multiple successful acquisitions, and Zack is especially well-versed in using growth channels that don't scale as a means to get initial traction. His introduction to the tech community of San Francisco was also as a designer, which lends itself especially well to a strong perspective on conversion rate optimization. At Hired, Zack is running the growth marketing efforts that supplement their robust paid acquisition strategy, which is driving many of the signups they have for both candidates and recruiters on their tech career recruitment platform. Now, I know how valuable your time is, and I also know how valuable Zack's perspective is on all these modern marketing trends. So, without further ado, let's head down the street from Instapage headquarters to the offices at Hired and go say hello to Zack. Well, this is kind of a fun interview here in the Hired office, Hired HQ in San Francisco. I've been here one or two other times. I have a number of friends who work here. And one of the guys that I've met here before is Zack Onisko, VP of Growth here at Hired. Zack, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for joining us. And you're in a product role now too, is that right?
I was wearing the hat for a couple of months while we were kind of in between head of product. So we have a guy named Wyatt just came over here from Optimizely, so he's our new SVP of product, and
awesome.
Super excited to have him.
Great. Given that you have experience with all these different kinds of organizations, so let's just hear maybe the 15-second version of how you got here. Maybe some of how you got started, and maybe how you ended up at Hired.
Yeah, sure. Well, the quick career summary is that started as a designer, moved into a PM role, and then moved into a growth function, really focused on growth specifically. It's been about a 15-year run, built 3 companies from infancy to successful acquisition, and now here at Hired and aiming to take this thing IPO.
I certainly can see that happening with the amount of ads that I see from you guys on a fairly regular basis. I mean, you're working with what appears to be a pretty large advertising budget.
Yeah, I mean, without disclosing the numbers,
sure.
We're probably one of the larger advertisers on LinkedIn, for example, large, Facebook budget, Twitter, and then, kind of expands out from there with a bunch of one-off deals all over the place.
Yeah, I say that observationally because I get a number of your ads, and most of the people I know who operate in the tech space get many of your ads as well. So that's how I was able to make that deduction. Throughout your career, with all of the things that you've done, what was your first kind of interaction, for better or for worse, with paid?
Yeah, I mean, right out of college, I sort of design degree. My first job was a design role on a marketing team at a startup who was spending about $1.5 million a month on paid. And coming into a role like that, you really start to design for performance, and you learn really quickly about user behavior and what, the things that'll get people to click and drive traffic through an advertisement to a website. And so that was very early, moving from design into the marketing world, was kind of trial by fire. But that's really where I got my love for A/B testing, and really the whole quantifying performance was through that experience in that marketing team. And that drove a career into product, and spent over a decade just working on designing products and making them grow.
It's interesting you said that about A/B testing, because yes, A/B testing is very, very important. I know how much you advocate for that, but you also talk a lot about growth channels or methodologies for growth that don't necessarily scale. You have this really great deck online that's 20 ways to grow your company that are non-traditional. How do you kind of balance this analytical approach with A/B testing and some of these ways that you outline in that deck?
Yeah, so that talk was really about, a lot of founders are just in a big hurry to get to that scalable growth. They just want to go viral and get to zillions of users, overnight. And that talk's really talking about 3 stages of startup growth. The first stage being product market fit, and that's really just finding out, is there a market large enough to build a sustainable business? Once you have a signal there, where a lot of founders make mistakes, they jump right into like, okay, let's figure out our viral channel. Let's dump a lot of money in paid, right? And then they blow through their seed fund and they're bankrupt. The smart folks, and you start to think about like all the high growth companies today, from Airbnb to Pinterest to whoever, they had very humble beginnings, and they didn't get to that mega growth overnight. It was something that was a slow play. And that middle chunk, like the second stage, is this non-scalable stage. And Paul Graham has a quote of an analogy of the old car cranks that you just turn to start motors back in the 20s. And he says that founders, you have to turn that crank, and it's a manual, laborious process to get that going. But once it's going, then it runs on its own. And so that manual cranking is this non-scalable growth stage, and then the engine running on its own is really the scalable stage. And the scalable stage kind of has like 5 major general buckets. It's paid, but it's also SEO. It's virality. That's the one that everyone thinks about with growth. That's the holy grail. Then there's like sales. If you have a product where you have profit left over to pay people, then you just keep throwing people at the problem. And there's partnerships if you piggyback on somebody else's existing audiences. So really those are the 5 channels that we have as entrepreneurs to scale pretty businesses. And it's funny, like Hired, we're really going after all of those, which is pretty unique, because most companies, you can pretty much point to one of those.
Well, it also appears that you're at a place where you can afford to do that in terms of like bandwidth and other things that you guys have going on here.
Yeah, in the beginning, we were very much a paid kind of one channel approach to driving growth. And that's something that we're actively working to do, is to diversify our acquisition channels. And we've just recently, over the last year, kind of built this mature sales force that is like the next big acquisition horsepower. But then we're also, the growth team is working on, building out referral channels and, partnership programs, and doubling down on content marketing and SEO, and, going after that free organic traffic.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. You said something interesting a few moments ago about people just dumping all their seed money into paid.
Yeah, when people think about marketing or advertising, they just think like, oh, I need to do Facebook ads. And ads are great, and you could do a lot of experimentation on those channels because they're highly targeted, and you can get a handful of ads for relatively low cost. But it's pretty dangerous when you have campaigns that are just running on autopilot, and you're blowing through 10 grand a week, and you look back 6 months later and you're like, where'd all the money go? So I think that non-scalable stage, it really comes down to hustling and doing the legwork of finding some low-cost channels for acquisition, because paid channels are expensive. Hired spends a lot on advertisement, but we have a super, super high customer acquisition cost, but we can afford it because we make 15 grand on average for every transaction, right? So the numbers work out for us, but even then, it's still really expensive. And so for a lot of other businesses, it should really be the last channel that you go after. Try a bunch of other stuff first, and then if you fail everywhere else, run some experiments on paid. But it's expensive, it's competitive, and it's just gotten more expensive and more competitive over the years.
Given that, why do you think people just kind of default to it?
Because it's easy. It's easy to run ads, it's easy to get some campaigns going, and kind of check that box.
I wonder if it's easy to do that because people don't have dedicated marketers and they just need something that they can kind of do quickly, or there's something else to that.
If you're great at paid and you know, it all comes down to your business too. So every business is different.
Sure.
If you're selling something, you have, you know, your angle in a space that's not competitive, then paid can work for you. If you're really looking to go high growth and you're building a business where you need thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users, it's just not a viable channel.
Do you have any thoughts in terms of retargeting, or?
I mean, Home Depot got me to buy a lawnmower. I left a lawnmower in my shopping cart. And they chased me all over the internet with that freaking lawnmower. But
wow.
You know, eventually I broke down and went back and checked out. So, you know, I think you could do some smart things like that where people retarget incorrectly is like Amazon. They'll show me things like the thing I just bought. And I'm like, well, I already bought the thing, so why are you showing me other things? I don't need 10 more bowling balls. You know, I already have a bowling ball. I just bought it, you know? So when we're not really thinking like with the user first and you're just kind of getting sloppy or lazy with the retargeting, I think that's where it falls down.
Is it fair to say that more marketers who are running paid, are they doing it wrong? Are more people doing it wrong than might be doing it right? Even doing it at the wrong time or having the wrong budget for it or whatever it may be.
I mean, I think it's like anything, right? So it's a skill set, and you know, the more experience you have, the better you'll get. Just advertising in general, it's a hit space business. If you have a dud campaign, you're not going to see it perform. If you kind of think outside the box and you do something that grabs people's attention, again, it's like you're competing for people's attention in a very competitive landscape. And there's all these studies about, you know, just people have a vision of their screen that ignores ads. And even like on mobile where the ad is as big as the screen almost, people will just scroll past it, you know, immediately, intuitively, because we've just trained ourselves to just tune out this noisy advertisement.
Let's talk about top of funnel CRO. Somebody comes straight to your site. Maybe it's a branded search. Maybe it's direct traffic. What are some of the observations that you've made in your career as a growth marketer on things that are working and things that aren't working on homepage CRO?
I tend to steer away from tactical advice because, you know, one thing that worked for one company rarely works for other folks. And it's also kind of a shame that, you know, as a kind of a standard practice, we've become very stale in our creativity of what we can do with homepages and landing pages. We've distilled down all the ideas to the heading at the top. There's maybe a subtext under that, and then a call to action, and that's above this like hero graphic, 100% width, and then underneath that, there's 3 icons, maybe a few words, and you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
this is like every website ever.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
And so I think like that is becoming the new ad, where it's like, I see your thing, and it's just like everything else, and you start to like tone it out. And I think what I tell my guys, and with Hired too, like we have a challenge of lower traffic, and so it just requires us to do bigger swings to get to statistical significance, you know, in a short amount of time. And so we have to really aim for making a much larger change in a conversion rate than, you know, when I was at BranchOut, you know, we were signing up, you know, at our peak, 600,000 people a day. High growth, we can set an A/B test live and 5 minutes later have significance and go.
That is wild. Set
that variation live and then set the next one on top of it, and we're just like compounding those growth rates on top of each other. At Hired, we can have a test run for 2 weeks, you know, and so it's just a much longer process to get that change. And so, you know, what we really want to see is a big win. You know, I could talk till the cows come home about like things I've done, like button color tests and you know, copy changes, and copy is important. Like you can move.
Let's talk about.
You can move the needle with copy, but only so much. You can only play that game for so long before you really have to think, what's a whole nother approach that you can take this page. And
we talk a lot at Instapage about personalization, specifically advertising personalization, but I think that the whole concept of personalization goes beyond just ads. It comes down to, you know, the user experience within an app or within a website or wherever else it might be. I think that people want to be humanized. They want to feel that they're not just another number in somebody's like Stripe account or something like that. What would you say? How does top of funnel copy work towards that kind of personalization?
Yeah, I mean, there's some clever things you can do. You know, there's If you go to Optimizely's homepage, they sniff your IP and they know that's the IP of a corporate headquarters. They'll say, hello, Microsoft, welcome to Optimizely. So that's, you can do some cool stuff there, which is neat when you don't have any information on the visitor. So, you go to weather sites and you see like, oh, they see that you're in, San Francisco. Here's the weather in San Francisco, like automatically. That's some cool stuff. I think the personalization when you get to like B2C or any e-commerce is really around recommendations. When you have a registered user and you're learning about their behavior and you're making predictions about recommendations of what they might like next. And so you see like Medium do it through social connections, and there's some cool recommendations and personalizations there that's more just through a social signal. And then you see like, e-commerce sites, Amazon is the the obvious one who just, they see patterns in your search behavior and then they bubble up, recommendations based on that. That gives a great experience. One of the things we're working on here is not so much personalization, and personalization is kind of this ambiguous term, and it means lots of different things, all these different applications. But for me and for growth and like in terms of like reducing friction from onboarding, right, and for hired like as a candidate coming on, like it's like 9 steps and like it's pretty, we're looking at how we can reduce this flow, but we're looking at like if we can use third-party data sources to get some like general public information on you that's already out there. So you give us like a unique identifier, and then we can kind of either choose to pre-fill form fields for you. So like, hey, we guessed that this is you. Is this correct? Or we can just like, if we have enough confidence that this information is there, we don't need to have them basically fill out their resume, because we can get that information, and just store it in the back end. We don't need them to fill it out manually. So I think that's another example of personalization. SDRs doing outreach, and there's all these like crazy like sales tech tools today that just have lots of public data built into it. So if you send an email, why not add a bunch of params from the sign up form into that call to action in the email, and then on the landing page, just have all those fields pre-filled, and then the user can then choose to edit them or not. But it just cuts out friction. Landing on a page and having to type out like 7 form fields is just work. And so if you can take work away from folks, that's personalization, and that's optimizing, and that's CRO.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate, what about the argument that if there are more form fields, if there are more steps, if you have a 2-step opt-in or something like that you're going to have higher quality leads?
I think every business that requires lots of information, like that's the devil's advocate thing. It's like, well, we want higher quality, but I think it depends. I think that it's one way to filter people out, but if you're focused on conversion rate optimization, you shouldn't be filtering people out by making your interface harder to use. Find another way to do that. That's just bad user experience.
Is that almost like anti-CRO?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the dark patterns, like getting people to manipulate behavior through interface. If you're familiar, I'd throw that in that bucket. I would say like there's a scale, right? And so high intent people will spend the time and go and fill out all the forms, but so will desperate people. And so you might have had people who are high quality and they're just like, I'm not filling out 17 form fields for this application, and you just lost a high quality person because your application's hard to use.
See, I wonder if there's a way, and I'm kind of hypothesizing here, but I wonder if there's a way with personalization to actually provide the right number of form fields to the right number of person, or the right type of person, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, could be. If that's your strategy, like that's, by all means, like chase that. I kind of come from the school of thought that less is a better experience. The goal should be able to get your user in front of that aha moment as fast as possible. So everything else that's blocking them from getting to that aha moment is more things that, you're putting in front of them. And I think that, what drives me batty, and, we're guilty of it here, is like SaaS products and like blocking any kind of demo of the product until you have to talk to a salesperson.
That's one of the reasons that we don't require a credit card or anything at Instapage.
Yeah.
You can just dive in, start using it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like cut the friction out. And there's those like graphs of all the logos of marketing SaaS products. Have you seen this?
Yeah. They have like the whole MarTech ecosystem.
And you can go you could search by year and just do Google image search and just it was like a couple hundred, just like 5 years ago. And the thing is like grown. Now there's like 3,000 plus, marketing SaaS products out there. I don't know how long this like sales roadblock is going to last when all these like new kids in the block are just like, like Instapage. It's like, we made an awesome product. Here it is.
Check it out.
Use it with no friction. Come on board. I think that's the way of the future, and that's the better user experience. And I think at the end of the day, better user experience will win.
Speaking of the way of the future, I know that you've done talks about why paid is one of the channels that you don't like to work with necessarily as much. We've talked about it a little bit during this conversation about how if you're not doing it strategically with the right way, then you could spend a bunch of money that you don't necessarily want to spend. Given what you just said about the way of the future and creating as frictionless of an experience as possible, what do you see that way of the future being in terms of paid, if you're able to comment on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, the channels are always evolving. Now there's Instagram and there's Snapchat and there's all these new opportunities to spend your money. And I think, I think that'll continue to evolve. I think that mobile is still very much in its infancy. And I think that'll be a battle of advertisers wanting to get in front of larger audiences and OSs, trying to prevent ads and just trying to, protect that user experience. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. There's all these interesting technologies like bots and AI coming out that could be interesting in terms of advertising or just insanely annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it could be both. Sometimes the insanely annoying things are the most interesting to talk about, Yeah. Well, Zack, once again, thank you so much for letting us come to your office here. It's been a pleasure pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah, same.
And hope to see you soon.
Yeah, man.
Here are the takeaways from our conversation with Zack Onisko. Understanding design and product is a major benefit when you're a marketer. Learning how to analyze user behavior and what gets people to take action is going to allow you to make more data-informed decisions on the aesthetics that will drive KPIs for all your marketing channels. Using ads to go viral overnight is not something that you can plan on. In fact, that is the kind of mindset that can bankrupt an early-stage company. As Zack and many other guests on advertising influencers have discussed so far, effective advertising requires maintenance and sophistication. Even if your ads are low cost, don't let your campaign run on autopilot. Higher value or more expensive products can sometimes afford a more aggressive advertising spend. As one of the biggest advertisers on LinkedIn and a product that generates perhaps $15,000 with every sale, spending some money on paid acquisition to generate that kind of revenue is appropriate and allows for serious experimentation. Getting the inside story on what these booming companies are doing is incredibly exciting, especially as someone who regularly encounters their digital advertising efforts. Pleasure once again speaking to the awesome Zack Onisko from Hired, a company I certainly expect to continue disrupting the recruiting industry. And as always, a transcript of this episode in its entirety, along with the rest of the highlights, is available at instapage.com/podcast. And you'll find every other episode there as well. And while you're online, also be sure to check out the rest of the resources we've prepared for you on lowering the cost of customer acquisition. Our all-star content team works tirelessly on videos, blog posts, and other ways to add to our mission statement of lowering the cost of customer acquisition, which, again, goes beyond having the most powerful landing page platform. It is also our goal to share stories, share skills, and strategies to help you improve your marketing efforts and break through the noise in crowded markets. And while you're there as well, drop me an email if you're so inclined. It's ander@instapage.com. That's ANDER at instapage.com. And you're welcome to reach out about literally anything on your mind, even if it's just to say hello. I am always happy to connect with my fellow marketers. Our next episode features the former head of affiliate marketing at eBay Motors and the founder of Round Barn Labs, a marketing consultancy right here in San Francisco. His name is Ty DeGrange. Ty has extensive experience in a number of different verticals, especially with advertising, and it was a pleasure to head to his office for an awesome conversation that I can't wait to share with you. So certainly hope to see you back here for that one. On that note, my name is Ander, marketing educator at Instapage. Cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.